Welcome to BWC News. I am Elizabeth. On the afternoon of July 6, 2023, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen arrived in Beijing by plane. Previously, China and the United States agreed that Yellen would visit China between July 6 and 9. For this Yellen's visit to China, the German media Süddeutsche Zeitung commented, "Her visit to China is a mild signal from Washington to Beijing." Yet is this really the case? What is the purpose of Yellen's trip? How will she handle the complex and delicate economic and trade relations between China and the United States? Will she work towards a new agreement between the two countries? These questions have attracted a lot of attention. In fact, shortly before Yellen's trip, she and other U.S. officials had already made some important speeches on the economic and trade relations between China and the United States. From their remarks, we can glimpse some clues. First, the U.S. side said they have no intention of decoupling from China, but rather seek to build a constructive and fair economic relationship with China. In one of her most wide-ranging speeches, Yellen said on April 20 that any effort to decouple from China would be disastrous and that the U.S. needs to work with China, where possible, to address global issues such as climate change, epidemic prevention and control, and international financial stability. She also said she plans to visit China in due course and hopes to engage in a substantive dialogue with her Chinese counterpart to lay the groundwork for responsible management of our bilateral relationship. But the U.S. side also stressed that they will stand firm in defense of national security, even at the expense of the U.S.-China relationship. Yellen criticized China for unfair trade measures against U.S. products and companies, such as tariff and non-tariff barriers, investment restrictions, intellectual property infringement, blockades and sanctions against U.S. technology companies. She said that, when our vital interests are threatened, the United States will not compromise on security with China and will continue to ensure its own security interests and those of its allies, and will give China a counterattack if necessary. U.S. Trade Representative David Deitch also said the Biden administration would consider a range of options if consultations between the U.S. and China fail, including new trade investigations that could lead to new tariffs. At the same time, the U.S. side also expressed its dissatisfaction with the first phase of the U.S.-China trade agreement. Deitch claimed that China has failed to meet its commitment in the agreement to purchase an additional $200 billion in U.S. goods and services in 2020 and 2021. She said this means the agreement has not come to fruition and China has not met the goals set out in the agreement. Her team is actively engaged and negotiating with China in hopes of improving the trade balance between the two countries. Yellen called on China to eliminate or reduce tariffs and non-tariff barriers to U.S. products, expand imports of U.S. products and increase the U.S. trade surplus with China. The purpose of Yellen's visit to China is also clear. In addition to the need for cheap Chinese goods to reduce domestic inflation in the United States, but also hope that China will do something about the purchase of U.S. debt. The U.S. government just recently passed a debt ceiling bill, but still faces a lack of confidence from overseas buyers and the problem of unsustainable debt. China, as one of the largest holders of U.S. debt, can take the lead if it takes the lead in buying U.S. debt, which can greatly ease the U.S. debt crisis by boosting the confidence of potential overseas buyers of U.S. debt. So, analyzing the speeches made by U.S. officials on U.S.-China economic and trade relations before Yellen's visit to China, we can see from their remarks that the U.S. side wants both to maintain economic ties with China and to put pressure on China in the security field, and wants China to make more concessions on trade issues. This hegemonic logic of wanting both, saying one thing and doing another, is obviously not in the fundamental interests of the people of China and the United States and the people of the world.